I'm so pro MBA, I've realized.
What?
I'm less anti-MBA than I thought.
Sometimes when you say a TH, you do a little...
Yeah, anything else? There's like 18 words I can't say around you, or I get bullied into submission. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Per My Last Email, the show where we give you the hot takes and tactics necessary to navigate work life and replace business education as we know it. All you need is this podcast.
Nothing else.
You don't need an MBA. You don't need even probably an undergrad. Just listen to the podcast.
Just subscribe to Per My Last Email.
And you're set.
That's what people are saying.
I'm Kyle Hagee, the co-host.
I'm Kaila Lopez, the co-host.
And why am I bringing up business education, Kayla?
Because today we're talking about if you should get an MBA.
Yes, it is the topic du jour.
So, have you ever considered getting an MBA?
Well, you might not know it because I'm not that smart, but I actually have my master's degree.
In what?
It's not in business, it's in political science.
And has it been super useful and you've used it forever and ever?
I genuinely do think it has been useful, but we're going to get into it, but like my program was all paid for and they paid me and I was working while getting it. And so
that's nice.
Big flex. So it was really nice. I think is more education beneficial? Yes. So I definitely learned things from it. I got a great network. I enjoyed it. But like in terms of applicability to like things I'm doing now, not super high. Probably not as much as MBA.
Was it 1 year or 2?
It was 2 years.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Me and Kayla have been friends for 3 years. I've definitely told her this story like 20 times.
Sure. I just whenever he opens his mouth, I just like stop.
Yeah.
Listening.
Like I'm your show co-host Kyle. You're like, oh, your name's Kyle?
I had no idea.
No idea. Okay, Kayla, have you got an MBA?
Gotten an MBA? No. Considered getting an MBA? Yes. So when I was in finance, I was thinking about switching careers. And at that point, I had been working for 2 years. And, the grumbling started of like, maybe you should get an MBA. That's how you pivot your career.
Yeah.
So I actually bought the GMAT books. And I even opened one of them, but there was like 18 books or whatever, and 17 of them were in plastic wrap when I threw them away 3 years ago.
I love that your flex is I even opened one of them.
I opened one book and I was like, wow, this is tough.
Yeah.
But I kind of put that aside for a few years, and in doing some research for this episode, I mean, I've been in the workforce for 8 years now, 9 years, and I'm kind of starting to think about it. Like, there are more pros than I thought. And I kind of started coming into this episode like, ugh, this is stupid. We're just going to talk about how MBAs are dumb. And now I'm like, I don't know, should I get one? So maybe we spend this time talking through if I should get
I'm
an
pro
MBA.
you get one, and you get one like right now.
You want me to just like leave?
Yeah, I think you should quit Morning Brew and go get your MBA. That'd be
Kyle's
huge.
like, I need a break.
Yeah. I need a new co-host. This is a nice way to transition to a different co-host. I'm personally very excited about this, and pretty much every friend I've ever had has a similar situation as you, where like at some point in your career, it's like a little like fairy comes down and is just like, MBA.
Get an MBA.
Yeah, like I don't know how, like if this is just a giant psyop, but like every single working individual, I feel like at some point it's like, should I get an MBA?
Yes.
And then I think thinking through like what are the pros, what are the cons is super interesting. My personal take is that I think MBAs are actually like the pendulum has swung. They're underrated now. And
that's a very hot take.
Yeah, we will get into it, but let's first set the scene. Like, what is the state of play for MBAs in the U.S. now? I know you did some.
I Googled history of MBA to prepare for this. So there have been business schools since like the early 1800s.
Yeah.
But the first Masters of Business Administration, which is the MBA, was offered in 1908 by Harvard. Duh.
Yeah.
And that ended up becoming Harvard Business School, which now obviously is a very well-known business school. It was a response to industrialization. Basically, businesses came to Harvard and they said, we need to prepare our employees a little bit better for what's coming. There's a lot of change.
Yep.
And so that's what Harvard created.
So it was like the workforce is changing, or like the way we're working is changing, and people aren't getting trained for that type of work.
Yes. So like the managerial class needed to be prepared.
Yeah.
And so the
new elites needed to be developed.
Exactly. So 1908 was the first MBA. It was a 2-year program, very similar to what we have today. But that continued to increase in popularity until 2021.
Right.
And it, I think, has still continued to increase. But in 2021, we have a stat that 250,000 students were enrolled globally in an MBA program.
Yep.
That's a lot for 1 year, considering, how many years there are.
There's a ton of years, actually. We did the research. There's like...
So stupid.
There's been at least 2,024 of them. No, MBAs are the most common graduate degree sought. So it is super, super popular. And what was interesting to me is the most common form of an MBA is actually part-time.
I didn't realize
where people think, okay,
Yeah.
this is a 2-year program. It's kind of programmed into our mind to think like that. Most people, a majority of them, take it part-time, maybe on the weekends, maybe like 1 or 2 days a week, and it spans over like 3 or 4 years. So there are ways to modulate it for your schedule.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think that also de-risks it a little bit when, at least for me, when I've been thinking about should I get an MBA or not, there's a huge opportunity cost.
Yeah.
Because not only are you paying for 2 years of very expensive education, you're also not getting an income for those 2 years. And, these are some of the especially if you've been in the workforce for a few years, this is high earning potential years for you that you're foregoing to get your MBA. And, we're going to talk about this, but one of the pros is hopefully that when you forego that income, you make it back.
This is called an ROI.
Yeah, you get the ROI back.
Yeah.
But it is still very risky to say, I'm going to go to a program for 2 years, pay potentially $250,000 for this education, and not be making any money. So the part-time it makes sense.
Right, exactly. If you do it full time and you don't have an income, you're paying $250,000 for the education. And if you're making let's say 120 a year, you're not making 240,000. You're actually missing out on 500K
Exactly.
of potential. And I think that's what people don't realize is that opportunity cost of giving up 2 years. But clearly the stats show most people have figured this out and go part-time. Since we're talking about compensation, just to set the scene for how much pay you do get or increase you get by getting an MBA. Most people that get an MBA, their earning potential does go up. The median goes from 80K to 120K of earnings. And 98% of the people that go to an MBA program have a positive debt to earnings ratio.
Oh, yeah.
So they are making the money back. That's stats from the Wall Street Journal. The other stat I found was interesting. If you go to an elite school, which we'll talk about, most people, 50% of people, 2 years after graduating from an elite MBA, a Harvard, a Stanford, they've paid back all of their debt and they're ready to have higher income, not have any debt. So I actually think for the most part, the stats do show this is a good investment long term. And I think the common conception is it isn't. So this is how I'm coming around to pro MBA. If you go part-time, you do make more money, you pay off your debt quick, and then you have an MBA. You're flexing.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because there's a lot of assumptions that go into this. First, if you're working full-time, we were just talking about this, you're probably going to have increases. We're talking about we're in the highest earning potential of our careers.
Yep.
The chances that you're going to increase your pay regardless is pretty high, unless you're stuck in a very, very dead-end job, in which case, maybe it does make sense to then do a career pivot. But one of the things that has changed over the past few years is, earlier we were talking about in 2021, there was 250,000 people that were enrolled globally in an MBA. But when you're talking about those elite schools, those top 5, top 3, whatever, the expectation is that it's a few people, they get hired immediately and they make a huge pay increase.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And that's not happening right now. So we have a stat here that says that at HBS, one of the top business schools in the world, 20% of MBAs in 2023 were looking for a job did not have one 3 months after graduating. And that's up from 8% in 2021. So in 3 years, we've gone from 8% unemployment after graduation to 20%.
Yeah, a fifth of the class is still looking for work.
Which is very, very high.
And I'm sure these people could get a job, but maybe it's the jobs they thought that were going to be available to them once getting an MBA from HBS aren't available to them.
Perhaps,
and so
yeah.
they're still looking. They still want to get that kind of prestigious job.
Yeah.
But that is like a pretty wild stat. Definitely something to be aware of. I think what's difficult is like the counterfactual, where if you go to Stanford and you get an MBA, and then like in 10 years you have a successful career, people are like, wow, it must have been the Stanford MBA. If you can get into Stanford, into their MBA program, like you were probably going to be successful no matter what. Like, what is actually the degree and what is just like the talent of the individual, where they're basically getting the smartest people to apply to their school, and then only a handful of them get in. My bet is those people are going to be successful anyway. So I think what's difficult for me, even though I've said I'm pro MBA, and we'll get into that, is the attribution. What did the MBA actually allow you to do that otherwise you wouldn't have been able to do? And what is just like, this is just a signal. If you can get into Harvard as an undergrad, you're probably going to be successful even if you don't go to Harvard. And they have done studies of people getting accepted to these schools who then don't end up going to the schools. They pretty much have the same outcomes as the people that got accepted and went. And so I do think it's tough to understand like what the MBA is actually causing and what is just getting accepted to these schools as like a signal for how talented you already are.
Interesting. There's actually a really good clip from Scott Galloway from Dan Toomey's like Good Work video that I think we should see now, because I think that has a really good point.
Let's watch it.
Scott Galloway, a media personality and professor at NYU Stern, told us more about the relationship between elite MBA programs and the companies that hire their students.
The admissions department is really the core competence of an elite school, because what they say to corporations is, we've screened 2,000 applicants. We force them to interview, take tests, get letters of recommendation. We run a credit score on them, for God's sakes. So we're basically a giant HR department that corporations will pay a huge premium to get our pre-screened candidates. And a customer in a business school is not the student. The student's the product. The customer is the corporation who's willing to pay an individual substantially more with that certification than they would pay that person pre-certification.
Sounds like Scott Galloway took my idea. So what? Okay, my lawyers will talk to his lawyers. But I actually really agree with this point. Like, there is a way that these schools are screening, just what I was saying, for very talented individuals. Then they're putting them through 2 years of, pretty rigorous work. And if you get to the other side, a company has confidence that that person has the skills that they want. And if they didn't go to that school, the ability for a corporation to like understand if someone has that drive, has that business knowledge, is a lot harder. So it makes it easier for corporations to hire.
Yeah, so this is probably a good opportunity to talk about the benefits of the MBA.
Yes.
So, what are you actually getting when you go through 2 years of this Master's of Business Administration? Obviously, you're learning about all these different elements of business, right? You're taking like quantitative analytics, you're taking supply chain management.
I know what some of those words mean. Yeah.
But
before
you're getting
you do this,
the actual skills.
I think this is really important, because when people hear MBA, they think the skills, but there is so much more. And so when you are evaluating, should I go get an MBA, it's important to know what are actually all the benefits you're getting. So you talked about skills, like what else do you consider?
It's funny because I actually feel like the skills part is like the least discussed in the conversation. A lot of people are talking about like it's a 2-year break, it's a 2-year party. Like you go and you just like travel around. It's like you build that network, which is true, right? You are building a network. Again, these are people that have been pre-screened by your program. They're probably very interesting. Well, maybe not, but who knows? They're probably very motivated. They're
probably
smart.
the most annoying people at parties.
Yeah, individuals that can score well on the GMAT. I don't know. But, you're getting those skills, you're meeting those people, you're also getting that name on your resume. So especially if you're at a top tier school. Again, this goes back to what we were talking about in a show a while ago with networking, which is, the networks that you're a part of can give you a leg up just by being a part of them, because that's that pre-screening.
Right.
So having the Harvard Business School name on your resume can do a lot for you. So there's a lot of benefits.
Yeah, I mean, the benefits I wrote down, just to reiterate this point, it's social proof. It's still a signal to the market that you've like accomplished something pretty substantial, and if you've gone to a great school, people hear Harvard and they're like, oh my God, you got to hire that person. You get a network of peers that are very talented. They might have people that know people at companies, so you're expanding your network service area. You are learning these skills that you're talking about. I also think there is like, you have focused time to actually work on stuff. And my hot take here is like, when anyone is like, you can learn everything at a business school on YouTube, shut up. Like, no, stop. Like, okay, then go do it. Like, everyone who says that is not actually learning this stuff. You're going to learn quantitative analysis on YouTube. You're going to have the discipline to sit down and watch the world's most boring YouTube video for 3 hours every night. Like, no, you're not. And so this focused time where you have peers that are like pushing you and supporting you, you have professors that are providing like real-time guidance and feedback. I do think that's super important. And I think this like learn anything at any time individually phenomenon, it's a bit overrated. I think it's good for like one particular thing, maybe for like a week. There's just no way you're going to hold yourself accountable for 2 years.
Right. And if you are, then you probably weren't a good candidate for an MBA anyway.
If you can do that, don't get an MBA. Go start a business, and we're ready to invest.
Yeah,
like you're built different.
I totally agree with that, and I think that's a really easy like criticism of the MBA is like, why would I pay for it when I can just access stuff online?
Yeah,
it's like, okay, great.
Why would I pay for a car? I could just build one myself. It's like you're not going to do that.
And the amount of time that it takes to vet those, like, there's no guarantee. Again, just like the school is vetting you, you're vetting the information that's coming out. When I go to Harvard Business School, I'm confident that the information that the teachers, the professors have been vetted and that they're like at the top of their game. And that might not be true. I mean, I don't know, but like, that's what that name has versus like, you know, Quant Guy 76 on YouTube. Like, I don't know what his qualifications are.
Okay, that's actually my pseudonym, so cool it with that. I am Quant Guy.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
So I think those are like the benefits of going. Yeah. We've talked about how, on the whole, for most people, it ends up being a positive ROI long term.
Yeah.
What do you consider to be the cons? You're talking about your thinking about going, like, what's holding you back? We just listed all these pros.
Yeah, well, so there's a few things. First, I think for me, I would probably want to lean in and do a full 2 years versus a part-time.
Really? Why is that?
Because I think a lot of the benefits that we've just talked about are amplified when you're fully in it. Like, it's easy to get distracted when you're working full time, and then this is kind of like a side thing. Yeah. I think the social network that you would get from that won't be as strong because you're not in it 24/7.
Interesting. And like how much effort can you really give it when you've worked a day 8 to 8 at your full-time job, and now you have to go do a quant analysis on the weekend?
Right.
It's tough.
And I think that is very impressive, and I'm not saying nobody should do that, but for me, I think that's, if I'm looking at what I would want to get out of an MBA, I think the network is one that is high enough. Obviously, the cost. When we just talked about the opportunity cost, you're talking about potentially $500,000 worth of value over 2 years that you're foregoing to be a part of this. I don't know if right now, based on all that information that we've just talked about, with people being less likely to get hired or people being like still looking for jobs 3 months out of graduation. Yeah. I don't know that it's guaranteed anymore. I think in the olden days, in the 10 years ago,
when we walked uphill both ways to school,
exactly, it was a lot more guaranteed because I think the MBA wasn't as ubiquitous as it is now. Yeah. And I don't think it's guaranteed anymore.
It's an interesting point. Like, if everyone has an MBA, it's almost like no one has an MBA. And I've heard many people say like the MBA is the new bachelor's degree, where like it just become this like almost like you default where it's less impressive. And I think as more and more people get one, it does become that. But in some ways, then if you don't have it, do people view you negatively? Right. So I could see that argument going both ways. Another take I have here is like, I think in general, we have like an optimization fetish. Like, people love thinking, love thinking about the ROI of everything. And so like, yes, I get it. Like, money's important, and you don't want to like go spend $300,000, $200,000 and then not get it back and end up in debt. Yeah. We've just said most people end up actually better off. I think at some point, like, look, if you are interested in learning about business, you want to build a network, and you think this would be like a fun, engaging thing for you to do, don't overthink it. Like, do you sit down before you go on a vacation and be like, what's the ROI of this vacation?
Yeah, but it's not a vacation.
Let me, okay, if I spend $2,000 to go to Bermuda, am I going to get $2,001 of life experiences there? Like, shut up.
That
like,
is so stupid.
No, like,
are you kidding me?
Sometimes we just overthink about things.
Yeah, but Bermuda, a trip to Bermuda is 6 days. This is 2 years of your life.
Yes.
And it's $200,000.
I understand, but I think if we're telling you, if most stats show like you end up good, like you don't need to overthink it. You don't need to sit here and be like, well, is that going to be me? If you want to have the experience, you can work it into your life. You're in a financially comfortable enough situation where you're like, I will be able to pay this back. I think everyone I talk to that gets an MBA says, for the most part, I love the experience.
I agree.
And so, okay, people love it. You're going to get an ROI. You're going to learn stuff, and it's going to be a cool experience in your life. Like, what's holding you back? Go get one.
Okay, now I feel like Kyle just wants me to quit. Kyle's like, go get the MBA. No, but I think there are a lot of very good reasons to go get an MBA. And I think there are a lot of very good reasons to say that I can get the same benefits without going. Now, talking about the actual skills, I think we just talked about this, Quankai 76, like, I don't trust him. I agree there. But in terms of building a network or accelerating your career or pivoting, I don't necessarily feel like you have to get an MBA to get those benefits.
Yeah, I mean, you could take all the benefits we listed, like social proof. Okay, you could go do some, not MBA, but like some smaller leadership program at Harvard for a week. You could go work for a great company that has a great reputation and get that social proof anyway. A network, yes, you could do an online class, which we should probably talk about because we ran them for a long time. You could do an online class, build a network that way, build a network in all the ways that we talked about on our networking episode. That's a plug. So there's ways to create like an MBA by yourself, but like, again, it is a lot of work to map out all these benefits, find a different way to get them. The beauty of an MBA is it packages up all of these things for you. It gives you a roadmap. It gives you top of the class professors who are going to guide you through that experience. And so, like, again, I think this idea, you can just recreate everything online. Like, yes, you can in theory, but show me one person that's actually doing that. I don't think there's many out there.
Yeah, well, I think, like, going back to, like, why I'm kind of on the fence and thinking about this, one of the things that I've experienced recently is quite a big career pivot where I'm still working at Morning Brew, but the role that I'm doing is very different. And there is a bit of like imposter syndrome that I'm feeling where I'm working in an industry or a division that I feel very unprepared for. And I'm like, gosh, if I could just go somewhere that would tell me how to think about this, then I would both feel more confident in this new role and maybe I would be able to feel more confident in the career path as well.
Yeah.
But I've already done the pivot, right? Like if I was still, let's say I was like stuck in a position that I hated and I wanted to do a completely different thing, the MBA is a really good like hinge point.
Yeah.
Where the story makes sense. I was, working in, I don't know, this is not me anymore, but I was working events and I decided I wanted to work in graphic design, and maybe you shouldn't go to an MBA for that, but whatever. I wanted to be in consulting.
Yep.
And so I decided to get my MBA. It's like, if you're stuck on a path, the MBA like opens up at least the story for a lot of different paths moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And my advice to people is like, know what you want to get on the other side of the MBA.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people I talk to as well, when they're thinking about an MBA, honestly, they're like, I'm a little burnt out at work. I'm not sure if what I want to be doing is actually what I want to be doing.
Yeah.
Man, a 2-year sabbatical sounds great. But if I quit my job and I just like, roam around my city for 2 years, like my aunt's going to think I'm a loser.
Yeah.
So I need to go to an MBA to make sure that Aunt Kathy thinks like I'm on the right path. Because if people tell you they're in an MBA program, you're like, oh,
it's impressive.
You have your life together. That is probably the worst reason to go get an MBA is like you just feel burnt out in your current situation. You really should get clarity about what is this MBA going to allow me to do that I want to do. Once you have that piece figured out, then I think it's good to go. If you don't have that piece figured out, you're going to end up 2 years, $200,000 in debt and probably stuck in the same spot where you didn't actually get that clarity that you were hoping for. And that I would definitely avoid.
Yeah. And I have actually quite a few friends who got their MBA for a variety of different reasons. And it's funny because everyone I talk to who's gotten their MBA is like, I loved it. It was the best experience. I had a great time, but it's not for everyone. And I don't think that, everyone should do it. But it's like, if everyone's saying that.
Everyone keeps telling us it's not for everyone, but everyone seems to really enjoy it.
Enjoy it. And maybe there are some people it's like bias of who I've talked to.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some people who really have hated the experience and don't recommend it at all. But I do think one of the things that I was just talking to my friend Kira about this, because I knew I was having this, episode. I was like, okay, give me your best advice.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she was talking about was the biggest change for her was the confidence that she has now walking into any room in any situation in the business world.
Right.
She is so confident now where she wasn't before because she's been exposed not only to a variety of different topics and she went to a very academically rigorous program. So she's like, I know pretty much anything that you're going to throw at me. She's had a lot of practice speaking. She's had a lot of practice interacting with people that are very different from her.
Yep.
But also it's just like the confidence that you get from knowing I have this degree and I feel like I can conquer anything because I've experienced so much now.
I think this is such a good point. I love this confidence piece because sometimes when I learn something myself online, I'm so afraid to say it in a meeting. I'm like, I don't know if this shit I read online is actually true at all. Like, is this really what a SWOT analysis means? I don't know. If you go to a school that's like, no, trust us. Like, you need to know Porter's 5 forces. Like, we got you. It does give you that confidence. I also think it's like an external signal to other people that you're serious about your work. I think it's less maybe the skills you learn necessarily, but more like, okay, this is someone that for 2 or 3 or 4 years, grinded. They really wanted to get better at business. That's someone I want on my team. I'm going to give them more responsibilities because it's clear they want it. So I think it's a really positive outward signal that you want to grow in your career. And I think that can take you a long way.
Yeah, I do agree. That being said, I'm still...
Sounds like Kayla's going to...
No. That being said, I still am very much on the fence for myself. And I feel like, when you're thinking about should I get an MBA, which I'm sure many of you have, there's this real hesitancy because of all the cons we've already talked about. And I do think that the conversation is changing a little bit because it's not guaranteed anymore that you're going to have a positive outcome. And I think a lot of the stats that we've been talking about maybe are a few years old. And there's this hesitancy of, gosh, thinking 1 in 5 HBS, Harvard Business School graduate is having a hard time finding a job that they're excited about.
Yeah.
And Harvard Business School, if we're talking about the social proof, the network, check. That's the brand name business school. And 1 in 5 is having difficulty finding a job that they're excited about. That's very scary to me. And it feels like it's not as guaranteed now as it used to be.
Yeah, I think that's a good counter, pushback against all the positive narrative that we've been talking about is still some people are struggling to find it, so make sure it's right for you.
Yeah.
I think the one thing I hear is I feel like people want to go to MBA and then they're like, it's going to let me start my own business or become an entrepreneur. And I think my take there is when I think of an entrepreneur, I think the exact opposite of business school.
Interesting.
I think if you want to start your own thing, the best thing to do is go start your own thing. You almost have to have that inner energy to be I don't need business school. You have a bit of a chip on your shoulder. I think business school is really strong for people who want to grow in corporate America. I don't think it's the path to go for entrepreneurship. I think that's honestly something you either have, you're risk on, or it's something you don't have, you're a little more risk off. And I feel like business school is for a little nerdier corporate America people. No disrespect, I've thought about it, but
no, I disagree actually quite a bit. I think there's 2 different things. First is if you want to become an entrepreneur, the network that you're going to get, you can find your co-founder, you can find your first employees. Also you do get that brand name when you're trying to raise money from a VC and they see you went to Harvard Business School. They're like, wow, this is the same thing that, Scott Galloway was talking about in that clip. Oh gosh, I'm, first round capital and you went to Harvard Business School and so did your co-founder and your first 3 employees. You guys must know what you're doing.
Yeah, maybe this is just me being anyone that says they want to be an entrepreneur, I'm you're not. Just do it. Yeah. So maybe that's a whole other episode.
I will say though is if I was very, very excited about the MBA but wasn't sure about it, one of the things that I would do to get like a mini MBA is to throw myself into a very new business. Because as like employee 3 or 4 at a startup,
Yeah.
you're going to be doing everything. And
Yeah.
you're going to be deeply, deeply understanding what issues a company faces, how to think about strategy, whether you're in a sales role or an engineering role or whatever.
Yep.
You're going to be having to wear multiple hats. You're probably going to get paid not super much because it's a brand new
It's more than
startup.
going into debt.
Yeah.
So it is positive.
So, and maybe you'll get some equity and like maybe nothing will happen, but I guarantee you'll learn a lot.
Yeah, this is such a good point, and I think because the benefit of a business school is you finally learn the breadth
Yeah.
of everything that goes into a business. I have a philosophy, and then I got 2 political science degrees. Why did I do that? I don't know anything about business.
Yeah.
Besides what I've learned just through practice.
Yeah.
And one of the benefits is like often you go into marketing, you kind of know a ton about marketing, you don't see the full scope. Business school gives you that full scope.
Yeah.
If you're employee 3 at a startup, you almost get the full scope because you have to do
Yeah.
everything. And so it's funny you bring this up because my former boss, Chuck, he was thinking about going to business school. And his the CEO of Cree at the time, Chuck eventually became CEO of
Yeah.
his company, said, "Do you want to get an MBA or do you want to get a Cree MBA?"
Huh.
And he was
so
like,
corny.
I know it is, but it speaks to this
Yeah.
point, which is, hey, you're early at this company. If you want to get an MBA to learn the breadth of the business, stay here.
Yeah.
We're going to show you all of this stuff, and you're going to get paid. And it worked out really, really well for him.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because they kind of had a thing where like they didn't want to hire MBAs for roles that were like had to be super innovative, had to be outside of the box because you kind of had to be wired different. They found MBAs were really good at like the tactical, practical kind of like process roles. And so some people have perceptions that an MBA is going to be really strong in one area, and some people have a perception it's going to be a little weak in the
Yeah.
other. And you probably should be aware of that too.
Yeah, I think those are great. So to wrap it up.
Yeah.
For somebody that is considering
Yeah.
if they should get an MBA or not, what are the top 3 things they should consider?
Before I give you the tactics, because I went to University of Minnesota, I have to stand up for the little guy here quickly.
Okay.
Because we've talked a ton about going to elite schools, and every piece of advice I see online is like, if you don't get into the Stanford or the Harvard, like just give up.
Yeah.
Like just give up on life. Like you suck. It's like, okay.
No.
I think if you're in New York, yeah, I run into people that have gone to like Stanford, Harvard all the time, and like, that's kind of what the market wants here. Like, there's just a ton of competition for talent. There's some really, really smart people here. And so you kind of need one of those degrees to stand out in New York. I don't think that's true for every market. Like, I know if you live in Minnesota and you get an MBA from the University of Minnesota, that's actually valued like a ton. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have a lot of people with Harvard degrees ending up in Minnesota. So if you get a Minnesota degree, like, you're kind of like cream of the crop there. And so I would hate for people to be like, oh, I could never get into Harvard, so an MBA like isn't right for me.
Yeah.
Again, if you want that experience, I say go for it anyway. But 2, like, I think it is a bit of a local degree. If you get an MBA from your like top school in your state, that's going to be valued really, really high. And also those schools have great connections to all the employers in that state. So if you're looking to stay there, you're going to build the network you need. I had to plug the little guy.
Yeah, wow. It seems like you're very pro MBA.
I'm pro
actually.
MBA. I didn't see this coming.
This is a shocking turnaround.
Yeah.
And I think I'm not going to get mine. So
I have not convinced Kayla. Okay, back to your questions about tactics. So here's the tactics I have. The first is, before anything, like, you have to understand why you're doing it. So, like, what are you actually hoping to get out of an MBA? If you can give a real clear answer, you feel like you've figured out the path you want to go on in life, I think it can supercharge that path. If you're saying, I want to go because I feel a little stuck and I don't have a plan and I'm not sure what I want, there's much more of a risk that in 2 years you're still stuck, but now you're $30,000 in debt.
Yeah.
So I would avoid that. My second thing is, dip your toes in the water. You could do a pre-MBA program. We were running 8-week mini MBA programs at Morning Brew. A ton of people that took our courses then went on to get an MBA.
Yeah.
They used that as like, let me test the waters. I'm going to build a network here. I'm going to get some exposure to what I would learn in MBA. Okay, like, I can handle this.
Yeah.
I think it would be great. Now I can go get an MBA. So you can de-risk it by doing some of these pre-MBA programs. The third thing is, like, talk with your boss. A ton of people say, well, I want to get an MBA to grow in my career. I want to get an MBA to make more money. Well, does your does your boss think that's going to let you grow in your career? Does your boss think that's going to get you more money? If they say like yes, then, again, that's de-risking it. You're going to have a better job when you come back. If they're like, yeah, we don't care, then like, really, are you going to get what you want to get out of it?
Right.
So I would
Assuming you come back.
Assuming you come back. I mean, also talking to your boss, because some employers would pay for you to get an MBA potentially.
Which changes the calculus on if you should get
Yeah, if Morning Brew's listening, maybe you can pay for Kayla's MBA. But those are my tactics. What are yours?
I think my one is really just understand the why you're going, and make sure that you find a school that aligns with that why. I think there's schools, this is another one from one of my friends. There are schools that are academically rigorous. There are schools that are known for being more social, at partying basically. But like
Do you have a list of those schools?
There are schools that are known for being very conducive to career pivots. There are schools that are known for, being great locally. So if you want to, move to Minnesota, maybe getting an MBA at the University of Minnesota is the best thing you can do. I think really understanding what you want out of that degree and finding a school that deeply aligns with that. I think it's a lot more work up front, but your payoff and the benefits will be a lot better after. Also, second tactic, consider joining a startup. I really think that that's like such an underrated win. And when we started at Morning Brew, it was a much smaller company. Our team was very small and kind of operated like a startup within a startup. And I think that I learned exponentially more in the first 6 months or year of working at Morning Brew than I had in the entire career that I've had before that. Yeah,
I think the startup advice is spot on. Well, I can't wait to do this podcast in about a year when you're sitting in the lobby of Harvard Business School and you're getting your MBA, and I'm just a guy with a political science master's degree. Okay, should we roll the credits, Kayla?
We should.
All right, our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Uchenna Waogu.
Mike Nallen is our senior director of Insights and Analytics.
And our chief content officer is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.